Hello, it's Mark's walking blog here. I've decided to redo the third video in this series because I wasn't quite happy with the pitch, and I'd left the guys off because it was raining and I wanted to get the video finished. We didn't really show the tent in its best light, and I got some comments to that effect, but I just wanted to show you what it's like when it's in the full mode, with both the inner that comes in with the tent and the fly sheet pegged completely out at all the pegging points. If we move closer, you can see that there's quite a good gap there between the fly and the inner, so it shouldn't touch, particularly when you guy out the fly sheet properly. We've got a zip in the inner, and it's basically quite a simple sort of, I suppose, J-zip, two-way, which is useful. If we look inside, there's plenty of room. You can see the reinforced patch there, which the pole sits in, and the inner is partly solid and partly mesh, but a good level of protection, let's say, for the winter. Probably overkill in the summer, and certainly I think that I would just use the other two options during the summer, apart from the fact when I'm car camping, and it's easy then. Now, as you'll guess, you can see there's not very much porch space. In fact, there's virtually nothing. And this is one of the issues, I think, with the tent in this mode. You can get around it, and I'll show you how to do that, but really this tent, I think, in a way, whilst you have the inner, which will be useful for car camping and maybe in the middle of the winter, I would really recommend also getting maybe the inner, which I showed you, the sort of Chinese sil nylon inner, or you can get a couple from the UK at varying pricing points, because I think that gives you the best of both worlds. You get bags and bags of space, and you reduce the weight considerably, and you've got plenty of room to store your gear and cook in inclement weather. So let's just have a look at how we take that inner in and create a bit more porch space. So I'm going to come round here, and you'll see that the inner tent is attached to the same pegging point as the fly. So all we've got to do basically is take that off there, that's a fly, and there, and then detach this one, and obviously put the fly back in, tighten it up if it's necessary, and then likewise the same here. One of the good things about this tent is it has been well thought out, and it is of high quality, and you get these little nice touches where this is where the door is, and it's the only pegging point which is in orange, the rest are in black, so you know exactly what to do. So we're going to unloosen this, and we're going to take that back as well, and then we're going to attach the fly again and tighten up a little bit. And as you can see, immediately I can pull this inner back. Now it isn't, as I said in the last a particularly elegant solution, but if you're in the middle of winter, or if you don't want to buy another inner, you can do that. And if you're on your own, or even your partner, there's still bags of room there basically to be able to utilize with the inner folded back. The only problem that I would see is that if we turn back round, you see the inners like that, is that perhaps during a sort of wet time, if you've got the inner folded pegged back again, of course when you come in and out of the tent, you're still going to have issues of bringing sort of water in. That's the downside of this. I think which really scores is as a modular unit, and that's why I've showed you these options, because if you look at the area that you have with just the fly sheet and the weight, which is only just over 600 grams, it's an enormous amount of area. And if you add in sort of a half inner or a quarter inner, you've got a really massive tent for one person or two people, for just over a kilo, and I think that's where it scores. But you do have to think about this, and you probably have to spend more on the money. Now, in the last video I showed you that I seam sealed the top here because I got some drips. Well, having done that didn't seem to work, so I went back to Nigel in Holland and told them that, because if you remember, their claim is that the type of fabric they're using, which is sort of similar in look to Hillyberg's, when the thine needles go in to stitch the fabric, it'll sort of self-repair, and therefore no seam sealing needed. Well, quite frankly, I've ended up sealing everything using a mixture of Terps and silicone seam sealer. So hopefully everything's going to be okay now, but I'm not sure that you can get away without seam sealing this tent. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is over here, is basically the pegs which come with it. Here we've got the peg that comes with it. It's a sort of V peg, lightweight, but there aren't enough if you're going to peg things out, so you need to get more. And personally, I always like to take a variety of pegs. I've got these really, you can see here, really long Eastern tent pegs. This one is significantly larger than the standard sort of blue one that you find, and that's great for pegging out where you've got to have support, so the main guying areas, or maybe where you've got sort of a difficult pegging, such as into heather and things like that, which does occur. Perhaps you find a small patch of grass and it's heather all around, and you need to peg into heather for the guy lines. I take those, and then these I always find good, which is the MSR sort of groundhogs. They're great, and I always take a few of these sort of V pegs. So I've got pegs for all conditions. Certainly this little peg here I think is okay for pegging out maybe a few bits around the tent, but it's not, I think, man enough really to do that. So, you know, it seems like a lot of tents you get these days, you do need to make some modifications. You do need to think about it, because whilst this is a great design, this tent, and I think there's a lot of attributes to it, you do have to think about it, and you do have to look at just sort of modifying it and thinking about your options. Because like a lot of tents these days, you know, they don't often come with all the pegs. You've got to add extra guy lines, you have to seam seal. So, you know, you can't really take a lot of tents out of the box these days and just get on with it without having some disadvantages. But all in all, I think this is a great tent, and I look forward to using it in more testing conditions. Bye for now.